What if I told you that your confidence isn't just misunderstood? It's feared, not by everyone, but by the ones who haven't yet made peace with their own reflection. When you walk into a room with your head high, your presence doesn't just enter, it unsettles. It awakens something they've buried. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we try to hide, even from ourselves. And guess what? A confident woman shines too bright for that shadow to stay hidden. This isn't about arrogance. It's about truth. And the truth is, when you fully embody who you are, when you stop shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone, you stop being palatable and start being powerful. If this hits home, stay with me. What you're about to learn could shift the way you see yourself forever. Because the issue was never that you were too much. It's that they were never ready. You walk in, not loudly, not aggressively, just fully present. You know who you are. And without saying a word, the air shifts. Eyes dart. Conversations pause. Someone adjusts their posture. And you've felt it before, haven't you? That flicker of resistance. That strange tension that doesn't come from anything you did, but from who you are. According to Carl Jung, every human carries a shadow. It's not evil, but it's uncomfortable. It's made of all the qualities we suppress: the envy, the fear, the insecurity, the weakness. The parts we've been told to hide because they don't fit the image we want to project. And here's the secret most people never say out loud. Your confidence doesn't threaten people because it's loud. It threatens them because it makes their shadow impossible to ignore. When you own your worth, you shine light into places others are still trying to keep in the dark. You don't need to speak a single word. Just existing fully, unapologetically, makes the invisible visible. You are not a threat. You're a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. This is why some men pull back, make passive-aggressive comments, or accuse you of being too much. It's not about you. It's about the parts of themselves they've refused to look at until your energy dragged it out into the open. Think about it. Ever been told you're intimidating, even when you were just being honest? Ever been called difficult for setting a boundary? Ever been told to be nicer when you were simply direct? That wasn't about tone. That wasn't about delivery. That was about shadow. You weren't being unkind, you were being clear. And clarity is blinding when someone spent their whole life in fog. Men who haven't reconciled with their shadow may react to you not with admiration, but with discomfort. Because instead of asking, how can I meet her there? They're thinking, what does this say about me? And that's the thing, your presence raises questions they haven't dared ask themselves. Questions like, why do I need control to feel secure? Why do I flinch at strong women? Why do I crave validation more than connection? They may not articulate it. Most don't. But that quiet internal panic they feel when you show up fully, that's shadow. And here's where it gets even more real. Many women are conditioned to sense that panic and shrink in response. So let me ask you, ever noticed how you tone yourself down just to make someone else feel bigger? You lower your voice, you soften your truth. You twist your brilliance into something more digestible. All because somewhere along the way, you were taught that being liked matters more than being whole. But there's a cost to that. Every time you shrink, you trade connection for control, their comfort for your silence. But here's the truth you're not supposed to know. The right people are not threatened by your wholeness. The ones who have met their own shadow will not fear yours. They'll recognize it. They'll respect it. They'll rise to meet it. So what happens if you stop shrinking? What happens when you choose to be the mirror, even if it cracks someone else's illusion? This is not about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming honest. It's about knowing that your light is not the problem, the cage around someone else's truth is. And when your confidence breaks that cage wide open, their reaction is not your responsibility. Your job is not to carry their shadow. Your job is to keep walking in your truth. Because the ones who fear your light were never meant to lead you through the dark. And maybe, just maybe, your power isn't too much. Maybe it's exactly what this world has been waiting for. Ready to keep going. What you'll hear next might just flip the way you see your feminine strength on its head. There's something ancient about your strength. Something that doesn't just live in this moment, but echoes through time. Carl Jung called it the anima, the feminine energy that lives inside the male unconscious. It's not weak, passive, or emotional in the way we've been taught to think about feminine. It's mysterious, creative, deep. And when a woman fully steps into her confidence, she doesn't just show up as herself. She awakens that hidden layer in the people around her. To a man who hasn't acknowledged his own anima, your presence can feel like a lightning strike. He doesn't know why he's shaken. He just knows something in him moved, and not in a way he can control. Your strength triggers a disruption, not because you did anything wrong, but because you remind him of something he forgot. The sacred feminine cannot be caged. That's why a confident woman is never just a woman, she's a symbol. She carries the energy of something older than rules, deeper than approval. You can feel it in the way she walks, the way she speaks without rushing, the way she holds eye contact without apology. She doesn't need to dominate to command the room. She simply is, and that alone reshapes the atmosphere. Society doesn't always know what to do with her. It tries to label her, box her in, or water her down, call her too intense, too intimidating, too cold. But none of that has anything to do with her essence, and everything to do with people's discomfort around unfiltered feminine power. You weren't meant to be small. You were meant to hold both fire and depth, to be sharp and soft, to know when to push and when to protect. You're not too much. You're balanced, just not in the way culture always expects. That's why you don't fit the mold, because you weren't made from it. You are the storm and the stillness, the lioness and the law. And deep down, you've always known that. Even if the world tried to bury it under politeness, silence, or the need to be liked. So let me ask you something. Does that resonate with the way people have tried to shrink you in the past? Have you ever been told to smile more, soften your edges, speak a little less just to keep things easier for someone else? That's not about harmony. That's about control. And when a woman steps outside of that, when she stops playing the role and starts living her truth, she becomes unpredictable. Not in a chaotic way, but in a powerful, uncontainable way. Jung believed that we each carry inner archetypes, universal images that live inside our psyche. For women, the fully expressed feminine contains multitudes. The nurturer, the queen, the wild woman, the mystic. When you embody confidence, you are not stepping into one box. You are reclaiming all of it. You bring back the warrior priestess who speaks truth even when her voice shakes. You revive the intuitive guide who trusts her knowing, even when no one else sees it. You remind the world that vulnerability and strength are not opposites, they are partners. This is why some people fear you. Because you're not just showing up, you're remembering who you are. And when you remember, you invite others to do the same. That kind of remembrance is disruptive. It rearranges priorities. It changes relationships. It awakens something that has been sleeping in the collective for far too long. Your confidence doesn't just make a statement. It carries a frequency. And those who aren't tuned into it might flinch, might pull back, might call it names to protect their comfort. But don't mistake their reaction for the truth. The truth is, you are becoming whole, and that's why the world needs you. Not the quieter, more digestible version of you. Not the version that's been edited for approval. The full expression, the raw intelligence, the grounded fire. The woman who's no longer trying to survive inside someone else's definition of femininity, but instead writing her own. Because once you reclaim that energy, once you live from it unapologetically, you don't just change your own life, you give silent permission to every woman watching you to do the same. This is the beginning of a deeper power, one that doesn't scream for attention, one that simply exists and demands to be reckoned with. Ready to keep going? In the next part, we're going to rip the curtain off the double standard you felt your whole life but maybe couldn't name. Until now. There's a twisted kind of applause that society gives you right up until the moment you stop asking for it. When you're beautiful but unaware, they celebrate your humility. When you're talented but quiet, they call you graceful. When you're powerful but pretend not to be, you're easy to love. But the second you own your beauty, your brilliance, your voice, the applause fades into silence. Or worse, judgment. You were taught to sparkle, but only in ways that didn't make others uncomfortable. Shine, but not too bright. Speak up, but not too often. Be confident, but always humble. There's a name for that. It's called a double bind, a trap where no matter what choice you make, you lose. And here's the truth. You're not too much. They're just not used to women who don't need permission to take up space. Confidence in a woman is often treated like an act of rebellion, like she must be arrogant, like she's asking for too much. But confidence isn't arrogance, it's clarity, it's alignment, it's the refusal to play a rigged game. You weren't born to fit inside a picture frame someone else designed. You weren't meant to be frozen in place, smiling politely inside someone else's narrative. You were meant to move, to shift, to evolve, to speak truths that ripple. And if that makes some people squirm, let them squirm. Because the real issue is not your volume, it's their inability to hear a woman without shrinking her down first. And that brings us here, to this moment where maybe you've started to notice the cracks in the system. Maybe you've seen how the rules bend depending on who's watching. How a man can lead with confidence and be called strong, while a woman does the same and gets labeled difficult. How charm in a man is admired, but in a woman, it's often distrusted. How power is welcomed in him, but weaponized in her. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern. So let me ask you something. How many times have you swallowed your voice to stay likable? How many times have you softened your truth so someone else could feel more in control? How many times have you called it compromise when it was really just shrinking? You're not imagining it. There are quiet rules you were taught, unspoken expectations you were handed before you even knew how to speak. But here's the beautiful disruption. You don't have to follow them anymore. What if confidence didn't have to come with a disclaimer? What if your strength didn't have to be packaged in politeness to be accepted? What if you stopped waiting for the world to say, "You're enough," and just started living like you already are? Confidence should not be an exception. It should be your baseline. And no, not everyone will cheer for that version of you. But the ones who matter, the ones who have done the work to see clearly, they will. They'll recognize the liberation in your voice, the depth behind your stillness, the integrity in your choices. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you're finally stepping into the space you were always meant to claim. Let them talk. Let them call you names. Let them misinterpret your presence. Because every label they throw is just proof that your power no longer fits inside their narrative. And that is something to be proud of. The next part of this journey, it's about reclaiming your growth not as rebellion, but as evolution. You've played small. You've stayed quiet. But what if the version of you who stops apologizing is the version who finally sets herself free? Let's go there. There's a moment in every woman's life that splits the timeline. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's a quiet realization, almost like a whisper that rises up from deep within. This is not who I am, and I'm done pretending. Carl Jung called this process individuation. At its core, it means becoming whole. It's not about becoming perfect or good or pleasing. It's about stripping away every layer of who you were told to be and stepping fully into who you've always been. Individuation is messy. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't come with applause, but it's the most honest kind of freedom you'll ever know. You stop following the script. You stop checking every mirror for approval. You stop waiting for someone to give you permission to be real. And instead, you start choosing truth over tradition, self-respect over acceptance, and growth over predictability. You are not breaking rules, you're writing a new language. That's what confidence really is. It's not an attitude, it's an alignment. It's what happens when your inner world matches your outer actions. You no longer have to fake it. You just are. And that's why it rattles people. Because most of society still rewards performance over authenticity. Women, especially, are praised when they play roles that are quiet, supportive, manageable. When you reject that system, not out of anger but out of clarity, people may not know how to respond. They might say you've changed, that you're colder, sharper, selfish. But the truth is, you've just become unavailable for anything less than real. That's the power of individuation. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about reclaiming yourself. And you don't owe anyone an apology for growing. Somewhere along the way, maybe you were told your confidence was too much, that your ambition needed softening, that your voice should be gentler, your tone more agreeable, your goals more realistic. But here's what they never told you. Confidence isn't something that needs healing. It needs honoring. You don't need to get smaller to be lovable. You don't need to make yourself more convenient to be respected. You don't need to earn your place by pretending to be less. You already are the woman you've been waiting to become. So let me ask you, when did you first realize you were more powerful than they told you? Was it the first time you said no without explaining yourself? Was it the first time you left a room instead of begging to stay? Was it the day you chose your peace over someone else's comfort? Whatever that moment was, hold on to it. That was your individuation cracking through the surface. That was your truth rising to meet you. And maybe now you're beginning to see confidence is not a performance. It's a return. A return to the girl who once knew who she was before the world told her to be someone else. A return to the woman who no longer needs to earn her space because she knows she is the space. People will try to define you with their own limits, but those limits were never yours. They came from fear, tradition, and expectation. You, on the other hand, come from truth, from instinct, from fire. And once you stop asking for permission to be yourself, you unlock a version of life that's rooted in freedom, not fear. This is the work. This is the becoming. And no, it's not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because the woman on the other side of this journey doesn't just survive, she leads. She creates. She chooses. And more than anything, she belongs fully to herself. The question now isn't whether you're ready. It's whether you're willing to stop apologizing for being ready. Because the world doesn't need another version of what it already understands. It needs you. So now you know your confidence is not a flaw. It's not a phase. It's not something you need to water down just to keep the peace. The question is, what will you do with that truth? Because confidence, once awakened, is not passive. It wants to move. It wants to shift things. And when you stop seeing it as something you have to defend and start treating it like the tool it is, it becomes a kind of compass, one that doesn't just guide you through the world but helps you read it. When someone reacts to your presence with discomfort, hesitation, or even hostility, that's not always rejection. Sometimes it's a revelation. You're not causing the reaction, you're exposing what's already there. Every sigh, every silence, every side comment is data. Don't shrink in response. Learn to read it. Reactions are maps. They show you where people are in their own self-work. A man who tenses when you speak your mind isn't necessarily bad, but he might still be wrestling with the idea that a woman can lead without needing to be softened first. Someone who avoids your gaze when you stand your ground might not hate your strength. They may not know how to stand in theirs yet. That's not your burden to carry. It's simply information. And when you stop personalizing it, you start owning your presence instead of defending it. This is the shift from carrying your confidence like a burden to using it as leverage. So how do you know when you're stepping into your real power? There are always signs. Not loud ones, but undeniable. The first sign is that you no longer ask for permission to exist. You stop looking around the room to gauge who you're allowed to be. You take up space not to dominate, but because you understand that shrinking is a form of self-betrayal. You walk in, speak up, hold your ground, and it doesn't feel rebellious anymore. It feels natural. The second sign is that you begin attracting people who meet you where you are. Not in ego, but in energy. You're no longer surrounded by people who need you to play small so they can feel big. Instead, you're met by those who find your power grounding, not threatening. Who don't flinch when you speak from the gut. Who don't try to dim your shine because they've worked to find their own. The third sign is this. Your silence starts to carry weight. You no longer need to explain yourself just to be taken seriously. Your boundaries don't need defending. Your absence becomes as meaningful as your words. And in that stillness, you feel a calm sense of command, not over others, but over your own reality. You are not too loud. The room has just been too quiet for too long. This isn't about being the loudest voice or the biggest personality. It's about being rooted, clear, undeniable. And when you live from that place, your power becomes contagious. You give others silent permission to rise. But first, you have to give it to yourself. If this feels like a wake-up call, maybe it's time to stop apologizing for being awake. This isn't the moment you dim down. This is the moment you step in, with clarity, with intention, with a quiet kind of courage that doesn't need to be understood to be respected. You've done enough shrinking. Now is the time to own the space you've earned. Because when you harness your confidence not to perform, But to live, you stop seeking validation and start creating impact. And that's where real power lives. You were never meant to change just to fit in. You're here to redefine what fitting in even means. And that's the truth they rarely say out loud. You don't need to be accepted to be powerful. You just need to accept yourself, fully, finally, without apology. Real power isn't about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself. So yes, your confidence may shake the room. Your presence might challenge the rules. And your voice? It might rattle the silence. But none of that is intimidation. That's what freedom sounds like. They told you to be quiet. You chose to be heard. They told you to be soft. You chose to be solid. That's not intimidation. That's liberation. If this spoke to something real in you, don't let it end here. Share this with someone who's still afraid of their own power. Or drop a comment about the moment you stopped playing small. Let's keep this fire going. Because the world doesn't just need more confident women. It needs more awakened ones. And your time? It's already here.